So, Charles and Lee sitting at 3 Happiness, and I'm asking Charles, what is the first memory you had as a little boy when you were tiny?
First memory that I had was, I don't remember the location, but I remember Bud Coward taking me and putting me on his shoulders and walking me down to a corner grocery and buying me a huge soft drink that they used to call a pop. And my mother getting totally upset with him and always saying to him, don't do that because he comes home and wets the bed. And that's probably my earliest memory.
Yeah. What do you remember next?
Well, I remember, this had to be fairly close to that, of my mother and Claire Spence and Violet, your mother, listening to Frank Sinatra and swooning and making swooning sound, which I had no idea about at that age. No, what the hell's wrong with him? But I distinctly remember that. And lots of memories of St. Mary Street, which was where Carol was born. And
how old were you when Carol was born?
4. I was 4. And your mother, before that, apparently I had a terrible adenoid and tonsil problem. And they took me and they removed my adenoids and my tonsils. And I had been around my mother, so I had choice language. And your mother took me to the corner grocery. And the grocers knew this, so they used to prime me. And they said, how are you in the hospital? Did they hurt you? And I said, those motherfuckers really, really hurt me. Those bastards, I told those son of a bitches about. And your mother, Violet, got so embarrassed, she grabbed me and ran out of the store. Now here's a 4-year-old kid that curses like a sailor. And my mother thought that at the time. I remember thinking that was hilarious.
Yes. Did you go to kindergarten?
I did. I went to Jackson Elementary in kindergarten. I think I was 5 years old. At that point in time, we lived at 1409 Annunciation. I went, the first day we used to have a little blanket we brought, and we would have nap time.
Right.
And I cased it, and I watched the teacher, and she got involved in something. First day I made these plans. So the next day when she got involved, I got up and slid out the door. And I left and hit the street and really didn't know where I lived. And it took me about 2 hours wandering around New Orleans at 5 years old to find my way home. And I get home, and all of a sudden the bell rings, and it's a Boy Scout. The school had sent a Boy Scout to get me and bring me back. So my dad said, no, he'll go tomorrow, we'll bring him tomorrow. But my dad had bought a bunch of little bird houses, and he said, when you come home from school, we're gonna put these bird houses up so these little birds will have a place to live. So he said, no, that's your punishment. We're not gonna do the bird houses. Well, it rained that night. Well, the next day we took back to school, and I said something about it. He said, all those poor little birds probably died last night. They probably drowned, and I started crying for the birds. But I remember that very well. I remember Claire Spence and your mother living in the front room at 1409. Remember Jack Hogarth always being there. There was a boarder named Renee, I think, who was, I believe, from either the Bahamas or Bermuda. But I'm not sure of that, but he had a British type accent. And your mother and Claire and he would take me down to the train station. There was a train station across the street from where we lived, about a block away, and they had like a diner, and they would buy me waffles. I loved waffles. So I remember that distinctly. I also remember across the street in this railroad yard was Italian prisoners of war.
Wow.
And they were working, and they had them at work, and they had wearing military type clothing, but they had a big white P painted on the back of their clothing. And there would be a soldier with a rifle with them, guarding them. I remember that. I remember the coming home of both Milton and Buddy. And I remember we were there, and all of a sudden the bell rings, and my dad answered, and a delivery truck was there. There's a great big box, a tall box. And we take it, and it's from Milton. And he was on Saipan and was involved in the invasion of Saipan. And that Saipan was important because we kept invading these islands, getting closer and closer to the Japanese mainland so that we could bomb Japan.
Okay.
And Saipan was one of the Japanese islands. So it was one where the Japanese had told all the residents that the Americans would eat the children and things, so they started throwing themselves and their children, rather than civilians, off the cliff. 1,000 of them or so jumped off this cliff into these rocks below. And we were trying to have interpreters tell them, no, they're not going to do anything. Didn't pay attention.
Terrible.
So my dad gets a crowbar and he takes this apart.
So it wasn't just a cardboard box?
No,
like
it was
we
a
did
wooden crate. And in it was a Japanese rifle with a bayonet, a long, big rifle with a bayonet. A pair of Japanese shoes, which looked like tennis shoes, but were a separate compartment for the big toes. And a Japanese flag that had writing on it, which I later found out was, as they went to war, their families signed this flag.
Wow.
And it was their personal flag as a good luck type
Right.
thing. So the person that had that flag was probably killed.
Yeah.
And I remember when Buddy came back, I palled around with Milton and Buddy. I can remember Milton taking me to the corner bar, which was Elwar's.
Great. Of course they did.
and buying me a poor boy sandwich and giving me nickels to play the slot machine.
Okay, not the jukebox, but the slot machine.
Yes. And, he drank a beer and I had a root beer, a Coke or something, and ate this sandwich. And then when Buddy came home, he was here for maybe a month, and I palled around with him almost every day. And I'm not sure on the transition of how we went from Violet living in the front room to Milton living in the front room. But I remember the parties. When Milton came back, my mother threw an amazingly large party. And everybody that she ever knew was invited. I don't remember that when Buddy came. I'm sure we must have done something. But I don't remember too much about that. I also remember Milton's wedding, where my Uncle Mike, who was the only one of my dad's brothers who remembered the baking part, baked a huge, about 5 or 6 layer wedding cake for Milton. And I remember him bringing that huge cake in. I can remember the Scandinavians a little bit, but they were pretty much kept away from us.
Can you talk about the house at 1409?
Yes, it was the owner of the New Orleans Pelicans, which was a minor league baseball franchise, been in New Orleans for a long time. The ballpark was on Tulane Avenue in Carrollton, and his name was Heineman, and it was Pelican Stadium. But
I remember
before
the
that,
stadium.
it was Heineman Stadium.
Okay.
The house at 1409 was the Heineman Mansion. It had 32 rooms in it. When they bought it, it was owned by a family named Erickson, who were Norwegian. And they had a connection with the Norwegian consulate. World War II was going on. There was Scandinavian sailors all over everything, taking ships back and forth across the Atlantic. And I remember it being somewhat, to my mother, tragic, because it was like, what happened? Have you seen Ole? Ole went down on the so-and-so that was U-boat
Right.
targeted. And I remember the immigration people coming. Remember a guy named Erickson, who was the chief immigration guy, would come and check their status if they'd been there too long or something.
Oh.
So, but they lived separately from us. But my mother pretty much ran the operation for the Scandinavians. We had a big dining room. We fed them 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And maybe 10 black women who worked there, who did laundry, who did cooking.
There was a woman named Millie.
Millie was my and Carol's nanny, but she also was like the head maid. She was the boss of all of them. But she was very close, and she kept track of me through high school. She got sent a notice of my graduation from high school. Of course, she couldn't have come to the graduation.
Right.
But she knew that I graduated from high school.
Your mom told me that when the seamen would come home drunk, that she would curse them out and drag them upstairs and put them to bed.
I don't know. I don't know. But my grandfather used to come over. He would walk from St. Mary Street there. He had a shop.
What was his first name?
His name, everybody called him Zeke.
Gray was his last name.
Gray was his last name.
What was his shop?
He was a carpenter. His name was Monroe Gray.
Okay.
And he was a twin, but his twin died at birth. But all of them thought he had special powers because he was born under a veil.
Under the call.
Yes. So they all thought that he could foresee things and do things. It was amazing. And I have pictures of his whole family,
Wow,
brothers.
I want to see that.
Yeah. And after he died, I was very close to him. Very close to him. I mean, it really, I was 7 years old. It was the first day of school. I was in a tub, taking a bath in a tin tub. We had no running water or anything in Marerro. And he was out plowing and came in and had a heart attack and died. And I couldn't understand that. And for years, I should have been taking counseling or seeing somebody. For years, I had problems with that. I couldn't sleep at night. I never understood death at all. And nobody said anything to me about it, other than it went through the ritual of having funerals and stuff.
Right.
And we loaded him on board a train, and the only time I've been on a train in my life. We rode from New Orleans to Hammond, and his funeral was held in my Aunt Mabel's living room. And everybody, including the mayor of Hammond, came to the funeral. The Grays were one of the bigger families in Hammond.
So he's buried in Hammond?
He's buried in Hammond in a cemetery. I remember going out in the woods, and I think I went to the same cemetery with a cousin that died a few years ago. That was my uncle Charlie, who was Monroe's, Zeke's brother, child. And she had died, and they buried her out there, and we went way out there. It was very interesting because after we went to the Hammond Community Center, and we must have had 150 relatives that came. It was the sort of thing
It was
everybody
a repast.
everybody brought food and stuff. We gave money, we didn't really give any food. And I got a lot of stories about a lot of history from a lot of that.
Right.
And we were never close. I knew some of these people. I still remember some of the names of cousins that my mother had. But I never was that close to them. I guess it was the distance geographically.
Right. Well, and they were real different. They were country people. I can edit it out.
Hello. That was Monday. I have an appointment Monday.
Okay. So all these people came to the community center. There was a big repast.
Yes.
You didn't know he knew that many people.
No. And they were Grays, McCormick's, and they all had kind of intermarried. One group, like, they married, McCormick's, I believe it was, they married the daughters of McCormick's, the Grays did, and the father of the bride gave each one of the Gray boys that married one of the daughters 40 acres of land.
So what was Zeke's wife, what was her maiden name? Her name was Anna Bell. Mix, right.
M-I-X, Mix.
She changed her name from Annabelle to she changed it from Annalena to Annabelle, according to my mom.
That probably is so.
Yeah. So she was there at that funeral? Grandma Anna?
No, she was long since deceased.
No, she died living at your house.
Yes, this funeral I went to happened about 5 years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was still on Zeke's funeral.
No.
Okay.
She died I was in the 9th grade, 1953 or 54.
She had a ruptured appendix.
Yes. And she kind of got abandoned for a while. After Zeke died, she was left and she moved into town, another place where she was just isolated.
She had a one-room place in the
upstairs
Irish Channel.
on the second
Yeah,
floor.
my mom took me one time to see her. I only remember going once.
And Sam lived across the street, but he hardly went over there. And my mother finally took her to live with us. And it was very difficult because we only had that little house.
Right.
So, and she was to that point where she was starting to go into dementia a little bit. And living alone probably made it worse. She probably went fast. She was a fantastic cook. She really was a good cook. And she had a lot of history, a lot of stories. I still remember some she told about her father. And, she was born after the Civil War, obviously. And she never told the bad parts. The drinking parts where they did crazy things and everything. But she was, at one point in time, she was a missionary to the Chinese in New Orleans.
Really?
Yes.
She had a restaurant at one time.
She had a restaurant. she was was sort of famous or infamous for being a hypochondriac. They thought she was, she had every disease known to man. She lived at Truro. She loved Truro. There are all sorts of stories, like one of the ones, I'm sure it wasn't funny. Sam Gray and my dad apparently were childhood friends, always.
I didn't know that.
And they lived around the corner. The
Okay.
bakery was around the corner from where they lived. And Sam's got a gun because old man Mix was a gunsmith, amongst the other things that he did. And he's got this gun, he picks it up, and he goes, "I'm gonna kill your German ass." Click. "I'm gonna shoot you in the private part." Click. "I'm gonna shoot you in the foot." Dance. Bam! And shot my dad in the foot. And they put my dad on a bicycle and wheeled him to the doctor with a shot foot. They lived a bigger than life.
Always something going on.
And when you were an infant, the way St. Mary Street was laid out, the front room is where Grandma and Grandpa lived. Buddy and Violet and you lived in the next big room. Then beyond that...
And this is on St. Mary Street?
Yes.
Okay.
Beyond that was the stairwell. And behind that was a little living room, and on the other side of that was the kitchen. And I remember I had to be 5 or 6, going there. I don't know why we were all there that early in the morning, or we may have spent the night, but my grandmother got up in the morning and cooked a full breakfast. We had, your daddy was at it before they went to work. It was early. My father was there, your dad was there, Zeke was there, Sam Gray was there, and she had fresh made biscuits, she had fried eggs, scrambled eggs, pancakes, butter, preserves, hot coffee, big thing of hot coffee. And they all ate like Amazon, like they were starving. And then they went to work.
Right.
And she used to do that. And my grandfather was like, with her, like he was the general. He gave orders.
Right.
Okay, and she pretty much followed every once in a while. She'd say, "Well, Monroe," and they don't give me any, it was that relationship. He used to call her, his pet name for her was Chub. That was an endearment that...
According to my mother, they had an active sex life, even in their old age.
Well, maybe so, I don't know. I mean, I would think that she did whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
So if he was still interested in sex, she was there.
Well, the details I have indicate that she was there with bells on.
Okay. Well, they only had 2 kids, though. So, and as I get the story, I looked up and I have floating around somewhere the history of her father, Mix, Samuel Felix Mix. He was living in Ponchatoula, but he had gone to Virginia to go to college. And he was going to college in Virginia, and the Civil War broke out. So he came back to Louisiana. He went to New Orleans, and it says, enroll for war. And Company B, 15th Louisiana Infantry, and gives the date of it. And he was elected a lieutenant. And he went to Manassas Junction, which was Bull Run, which was the first battle of the Civil War. And he was wounded. He was shot in the heel. And that pretty much bothered him the whole rest of the war. He was paroled to Ponchatoula on the invalid list. And then he came back and was in the recruiting area in Richmond. And apparently he was fairly intelligent. I have stuff that he bid on projects for the Corps Engineers, like some barges, and he made a takeoff on cypress boards and this and so forth.
So he could read and write.
Yes. Apparently beyond that. He also, according to my mother, liked little black girls. And he used to do little magic things to impress the. She said she got her ass whipped by climbing up to see what he was doing. He lived, his shop and everything was on the first floor at St. Mary Street.
Oh, okay.
And she climbed up on a barrel to look in the window.
So who are we talking about now?
My mother
And her dad?
no,
No, her
grandfather,
Okay.
who had been the Civil War vet.
Okay, I didn't know he was down
And-
here.
He and she fell, and he heard the noise and came out and knew she was peeking in on him and whipped her behind for doing that.
Right.
And she said he didn't drink except once a year there would be a Confederate veterans reunion at what was then the Roosevelt Hotel, or Grunwald at that time. And they would go down there and all meet and he'd get drunk. And it was all Confederate veterans and so. And I took your mother to see his tomb at Metairie Cemetery.
Really?
He's buried in the tomb of the Army of Northern Virginia.
No kidding.
Yes. Which is pretty impressive. It's a big mound, and you can go inside if the gate is open. And you'll see that on the front of the tomb, the names of the people that's there. And then there's a statue up top, it's high, of Johnny Reb looking north.
No kidding.
There's 3 Confederate monument cemeteries at Metairie Cemetery.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, and I took your mother to see that. Later, I was 70s, 71, 72, something like that.
So, but when you were a little guy, you used to pal around with my mom and Claire Stentz.
Yes.
Go places with them.
But with them, my mother worked with this, managing this Scandinavian Seamen's home. I was pretty much in charge. I was her charge.
Right.
And they palled me around. They taught me to read. I was 5 years old, learned how to read. Apparently I was a pretty good kid because I think they liked me at that point. And I'd have run-ins with your mother every once in a while. I remember one night I escaped, and her and Claire were doing something, and I went to the door, and they had a deadlock on it, and she didn't think I could do it, and I opened the deadlock and went out and ran down the neutral ground of Annunciation Street, and she came after me, and I didn't realize she had such long legs, and she ran my ass down in about a block and paddled me coming back. Now, you little bastard.
How did you feel? What did you think when you guys left the city? You were used to all this activity, all these people, and moved to Ames Boulevard, because that was country.
I thought it was wonderful. Remember, I had seen Saturdays was Cowboy Movie Day.
Right. Oh yeah, I forgot about
at
that.
the Happy Hour Theater, so I'd seen all kinds of cowboy movies and serials and stuff. Here I am in this area surrounded by dairies with cows and horses. Okay, and what do? Immediately we buy a cow and a calf and a mule. So, and I'm with my absolute great grandfather, who he's an icon to me. I worship him. Okay, and he's showing me all this stuff, and I'm working with him. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And we got all these Cajuns that got kids, and
That's interesting.
yeah, so I had a great time.
Did y'all have chickens?
We had 2,300 chickens at one time. After the old man died, they decided to go into the chicken business. I don't know why, but because they didn't know anything about agriculture or anything. But we had 2,300 chickens. They had an incubator. My mother and I used to stay up at night and take the chickens out of the eggs that would crack a little bit, and it was pretty gory stuff because they would be all full of.
Smells bad.
Yeah, it smells terrible, like rotten eggs.
Yeah.
And we'd have to take these little chickens, and then you'd have to keep them inside for a while, and then put them outside in the shed we had in brooders. And my earliest jobs was taking you had trays at the bottom of these stacks of brooders, and you'd take newspaper and fold it up where they pooped and throw it in a garbage can, and then you had to burn it. And then you had to put new newspaper down. So
Yeah.
I did that. It was a job I had.
It's disgusting.
Yes. So I wasn't too fond of chickens, other than like fried chicken.
I remember, I think it was my third birthday, it might have been my fourth. I had a birthday cake at your house on James Boulevard, the big house.
Yeah.
And I had a crush on Jerry Preston back.
Yes.
And I remember they turned off all the lights and there were candles on the cake in the dark. It was magical to me.
Yeah.
Being a little kid like I was. And somebody asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I said I wanted to marry Jerry Preston back and take him to Morningside Park, which is where my parents lived out in the woods.
Yeah, forgive me. I remember we had a cousin who was my cousin. His name was Charles Woessner. And I don't know how his mother was related to my mother, but they were cousins, might have been fourth
Right.
cousin or something. And anyway, he comes, he's my age, maybe a year older than me. He comes to spend some time with us. And he's there, and Mary Ann Petrie, who was about our age, 7, 8, 9 years old, I don't know exactly.
Okay.
He's there, and he sings this little song. She's pretty, but she's got freckles on her butt. She's pretty on her butt.
Right.
And Jelma Petrie, one of the trappers who was a Cajun, hears that and really took that as offensive, that he was saying that his little niece had freckles on her butt.
Right.
And my mother had to straighten him out. It was like, well, Jared, his name was Jelma, and she called him Jared. And it was almost like, here's the story, and if you don't like it, I'll just have to kill you. She explained it in a way that he understood.
Right. Right. He had to give
Yes,
up on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I remember my Aunt Louise gave us a piano. I don't know, my dad thought Carol might be a piano player, I don't know why. But a good piano, beautiful piano. And they sold it to Morris, who had built the house across the street from him. Morris couldn't play the piano. And it wound up, we got the piano back and eventually destroyed it by leaving it outside.
That's sad.
Yeah, sad. But I mean,
I can't imagine why Morris would buy a piano.
no, I guess he figured he'd have people come over for parties and stuff that might be able to play. I'm sure he bounced on it,
Right. I remember that across the street, George and Lucille, is that right? George and Lucille lived across the street?
From 3205.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
From the little house.
Yes. I remember meeting George and Lucille Lucille got married to George when she was 15.
Wow.
And she was from Biloxi.
Your mom was really young when she married Hoffman.
Yes, she was like 16 maybe?
Maybe.
I think
15 or
when
16.
your mother was born, she was 17.
Yeah.
So she had 2 kids, Bing Bing. And she was married to an idiot,
He was violent.
a lunatic, yes.
And much older than her.
Yes. Who was here in New Orleans going to the VA hospital, a Marine hospital, suffering war wounds from the First World War. He had been shell-shocked, and he also had been gassed. So he was in bad shape, and he was nuts to start off with. They had a pet rat, a pet white rat, and he was there eating it on St. Mary Street.
Mm-hmm.
And the rat, who used to run around and come up and climb on his shoulder and everything, ran on the table and he took a big fork and stabbed the rat.
Yikes.
So they wanted to kill him for that.
Right.
And she didn't stay too long. He took her back to North Carolina.
Right. She didn't like that at
No,
all.
and apparently your mother had tried to find him or something,
She found members of his family.
and they didn't want to talk.
She said they sounded really countrified and ignorant, and so
Yeah.
she didn't want to know them after all.
A lot of them were.
I tracked them down because I worked at the phone company, and I was able to spend a lot of time going to different information because we didn't have the
I
internet
think
back
he
then.
was from Gastonia, North Carolina.
Remember. But anyway, I found some numbers for her, and she called them and was disappointed.
A lot of them, like when my grandpa died, his brother Dick came down and spent maybe 2 weeks with us and used to come fairly often. And I really loved Dick because he looked so much like my grandfather.
Oh.
It was like a carbon copy.
Mm-hmm.
And Dick must have been in the army or something at some time because he wore khaki clothes and always a black tie that he tucked in military-like.
Mm-hmm.
And he wore a hat, okay? Always. And he hitchhiked all over America. He was a hitchhiker. Been to every state pretty much. And I remember my dad one time said, Dick, here's some money. I guess he wanted to leave when we lived in the little house. I'm going to give you the money for a bus ride back to Hammond. And no, I don't need that money. I can get back to Hammond. No, take the bus. And he left him off at a bus station, and later he's driving around with the cab, and he sees on Carrollton, on Claiborne Avenue, there's Dick standing out there
With his thumb out.
with his thumb out. So, and they were, all of them could read and write, but probably not much more than grammar school.
My mama said that Anna, all she ever read was the Bible, really.
Yeah,
That she read that regularly, but that
Yes.
was her reading.
yes.
Yeah.
But I think she was probably a little bit more educated than the rest of them.
Mm-hmm.
The cousins were spread out. The women cousins, some kind of way, wound up on Magazine Street, kind of slutting around at the Viking bar. Okay, I mean, it was. Some of them married Scandinavians.
Just slutting around.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, your mom was a flapper, and she had a beauty mark tattooed
yes,
on her cheek, and
Yes.
all the girls that were in her girl gang, whatever
did
it was,
that.
had their
A
beauty
little
mark
blue
tattooed.
mark.
Yeah, that was wild for those
Yes.
days.
And
And she had big boobs, and flappers were supposed to have flat chests, and so she used to strap her boobs down.
well, I don't remember that story.
My
but,
mom told me.
But you know, I don't know at what point in time she became a drinker, but I can remember her drinking from almost the time I have any recollection.
Right.
And until Carol said, no, the last few years, when she discovered religion, she discovered God, she quit that. Said she never quit drinking.
She had that religion all along.
Yeah, I said.
It wasn't new.
I said she preached better when she was drunk.
Oh, well, Carol was impressed when your mom had some experience where she was speaking in tongues.
Yes.
That proves it to Carol, whatever.
Yes. But Carol said, I used to really love it. They went through this thing where they used to go to revivals.
Right. You told me that.
Okay, and I had to go with them. And all of a sudden, I guess I got to be about 15, and she decided I could stay by myself. Or I just said, I'm not going anymore. And I remember going to this Assembly of God church in Westwego, where I was like, God, get me out of this place. They were playing music on accordions and banjos and stuff, and people would suddenly jump up and run up to the altar screaming and howling, and she's got the spirit. She saw the light. And I was like, if I could only make it out of here. I'm unarmed.
And you had made your communion in a Lutheran church,
Yes,
right? Which is a
when I
very
was 12.
very orderly.
Yes. And Carol loved all of that.
Yes.
Well, I hated it.
Yes.
And once I got to the point where she was like, oh, I never went again. And my mother would try, I think she started out as a Presbyterian, but she would go, she hated the Lutherans because she thought they were condescending to her. And she hated most of my dad's sisters because to her, to the sisters, my dad was a young man and he was being vamped by this older, fast woman.
Yes, that was accurate.
Yes. So they resented her.
They probably didn't like her language either. She was pretty salty.
Well, I don't know how salty she was with them. I mean, I know she had us trained pretty well. We'd go there. I remember going to my Aunt Louise's house, Dad's sister, and she would say, would y'all like a Coke? And we'd have to look at my mother, and my mother went, we'd say, yes, ma'am. How about a piece of cake? And my mother gave you the eye, you knew. You said, no, thank you. Okay. And it was amazing how we got trained that way to do those things. And, you know, part of it happened, my dad's father, who was a German immigrant, who was a master baker and had bakeries several places in New Orleans, and big bakeries, and probably had some money. When his wife died, and he got, I guess, too old to do all of that and decided to retire or something, he started seeing women. And he was running across the street to see this woman. He was hit by a car and broke both of his legs. So, moved in, he couldn't get up, he couldn't go to the bathroom.
You moved in with y'all?
Yeah, so Felicity Street. My dad had to come home because he couldn't get out of bed to go to the bathroom and have to change him and clean him up because he'd poop on himself.
Oh, wow.
And the sisters, especially my Aunt Pauline, hated my mother for that because she bitched about having to take care of the old man. And I don't
why
think,
didn't they take care of him then?
I don't know. But I don't think, I remember walking to church. We used to go to this church on Jackson Avenue with my dad on Sunday morning, and we'd come back and we'd pass where at that time my grandfather was living with his daughter Pauline, who was my dad's sister. Pauline would not allow my dad on the property. We had to stay out on the street and talk to the old man. And I remember being a little, I can't remember what was said, but to me, he was a little rough kind of. But he would give me a silver dollar, okay? And he died when I was like 5. I remember the first funeral I went to was my grandpa Woessner.
Okay.
And,
So you don't know what caused that schism?
No. Other than it had to do with my mother and taking care of the old man. She resented them putting that on my father.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess they didn't think much of my mother.
Yeah.
But I have memories of Felicity, I'm there, and we're eating, and Sam Gray comes over, and he's chewing gum, or we thought he was chewing gum. And my mother looks at him and says, "You dumb son of a bitch."
Go ahead.
"Dumb son of a bitch, you're chewing your tongue. Them goofballs have
He
got
was
you."
on speed.
Yeah, you're chewing your tongue, and your mouth is bleeding. That I remember. They rented rooms, and they had a guy named Bondi, who was a little guy who was a bird expert. He raised birds and sparrows and all kinds of things. He was an expert on birds. We had One-Eyed Conley, who was world famous. You can still find stuff about One-Eyed Conley, who was a gate crasher.
Okay.
And it was nothing he had not been to. Like he would go to a championship boxing match, and without buying it, he'd have a block ice. "Go, gangway, gotta go in and deliver this ice," and crash the gate. All kinds of schemes like that. So he was famous. He lived there. There was a whole cast of characters.
That is a cast of characters.
Yes.
Sure.
We had a group named, what was it? Ralph and Liddy. They had 2 kids. Can't remember what the hell her last name was. She had tuberculosis. They used to visit us, and my mother would take and throw the glasses away when she left because Liddy said, but they were very nice. They were from Thibodeau,
Right.
Chalk Bay, or Cottonport, or someplace. And they had a boy and a girl. And I guess it was before ionized drugs. I don't know whatever happened to him, if Liddy died from tuberculosis, but she was in bad shape.
Yeah.
It was a major killer then.
Yes.
And they were also tenants at Felicity Street. And I think Felicity Street was where your dad went in the Army.
Felicity, what corner?
I don't really know.
Okay. You would probably remember just saw it.
It was a great big house.
Yeah.
I was very young then.
Right.
I remember your dad built me a skate-mobile.
People today don't know about skate-mobiles. Can you tell us what's a skate-mobile?
Well, it was everybody who lived on concrete sidewalks. Kids had skates, and there were skates you had to have a skate key to tighten the skates onto your shoes. Well, they would take the skates, take them apart, and use the wheels to put on boxes and make like a scooter, but with skates. And you'd get pushed, or you could scoot yourself around.
Right. My mom used to have one when she was little.
And your mother was very close in a lot of ways with Sam Gray. Sam thought a lot of your mother.
He was around when she was a kid, and he used to tell my mom and Milton bedtime stories. They would climb up in bed with him, and he'd be smoking. She said she didn't realize they would get the giggles. The kids would get the giggles. She realized later he was smoking marijuana, and they were getting a contact high from being in the room with him. And he would tell them bedtime stories, and they would crack up. And Grandpa Gray told them stories too, but they were sad. They would end. You might not believe that's a lie. After he told them the sad thing, and they were crying about the dog dying or whatever.
Yeah.
You might not believe that's a lie, but it is. And then she would say, Grandpa.
I remember him telling me a story like about this guy who had some money, and he was a black guy, and he hid it in this hole. And he put barbed wire in the hole. So, and he put a dead snake there. So you reached down there and that barbed wire got you. You thought that snake had bit you.
Right.
I remember that story. Your mother was a storyteller too. Oh, I want my big toe. A scary story.
She told that story? Grandpa Gray told the story about the old dog tray, my old dog tray, and how the person would die and the dog would stay there on the grave and wouldn't leave until they died. You might not believe that's a lie, but it is. I didn't know that she told the big toe story.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Raw bones and what the hell was that other?
Bloody meat and raw bones.
Huh?
Bloody meat and raw bones. I don't know that story, but I remember those words.
Yes.
Carol knows that story.
Oh.
I'm about ready to
Make it?
Yeah, how about you? My back is starting to
Yeah,
hurt.
pretty much. Is there anything else that...
No, but we'll do this again. This is the beginning.
Okay.
I'm going to turn this on.